Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's Urban Planning Committee meeting for the 27th of April 2016. In recognising the cultural diversity of our great city, I pay my respects to the local Indigenous people of Moreland by acknowledging that we meet on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. I offer my respects to the Wurundjeri elders past and present and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Members of the gallery, please note this Urban Planning Committee meeting is being recorded and web streamed live to Council's website. This recording will also be available as video on demand. Gallery attendees are advised they may be recorded during the meeting. Now we'll move to councillors and officers in attendance this evening. Councillor Gillies, Councillor Megan Hopper, Councillor John Kavanagh, myself Helen Davidson, Councillor Rob Thompson. And the officers in attendance tonight are Group Manager of City Development, Philip Priest, Group Planning Coordinator, Mark Hughes, Planning Coordinator, Robert Shatsford, Principal Urban Planner, Lauren Lees, and Governance Officer, Saskia Hunter. And do we have any apologies from councillors this evening?
Councillor Lambros Tapanos.
Moved by Councillor Kavanagh. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Megan Hopper. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. Are there any further apologies? No? Adoption of the minutes for the 23rd of March 2016. Do we have a motion for the adoption of the minutes?
I'm happy to move.
Moved by Councillor Kavanagh. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hopper. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Are there any declarations of interest or conflicts of interest to declare this evening? No, none to declare? Okay, I'll move on to an introduction of how this evening's Urban Planning Committee will run. The relevant planner will introduce the report and the officer's recommendations. I'll then give any objectors an opportunity to move to the lectern and make their submission. After this time, the applicant will be given the opportunity to speak. If you are making a submission, please state clearly your name and address for the record. You're requested to present your viewpoints clearly and concisely on why you support or oppose the planning application. Please do not repeat what other speakers have said and keep the discussion focused on relevant issues and points not previously raised. If you're opposed to the planning application, please inform the committee why you're opposed and suggest an alternative approach that would satisfy your concerns. Please use this opportunity to focus on your concerns rather than matters of detail in the officer's report. And there is a time limit of 3 minutes for each speaker, but as chairperson, I reserve the right to increase or decrease the time available. And I believe we have a procedural motion first for the Glenroy Road 184 to 186. Councillor Kavanagh.
Can I move a deferral of that item to be heard at the full council meeting on May the 11th at 7 p.m.
Is there a seconder?
I'll second it because I was going to move a motion anyway.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. All those in favour? I declare that carried.
Okay.
So this will be heard on the 11th of May at the full council meeting, and I'd encourage all people who wish to speak to attend that meeting, and that's when your submissions will be heard at that time. Thank you for attending this evening.
Thanks very much, Councillor.
Thank you.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'd like to acknowledge our Mayor, Councillor Samantha Rutnam, who's sitting in the gallery. We'll now move on to the presentation of officers' reports this evening, and the first one on the agenda is DED 27/16 476 to 478 Brunswick Road, Parkville Planning Permit Application, MPS 2015-895.
Thank you, Councillor. Up on the screen I've got an image of the site, which is known as 476 Brunswick Road in Parkville. The site forms part of the Reggio Calabria Club, and the subject of this planning application relates to a soccer oval, which is shown in the foreground there. The proposal seeks the temporary use, buildings and works for a car park for staff and construction vehicles associated with the CityLink Tullamarine widening project. The application underwent public notice. During the public notice period, there was a public information session, which was attended by the applicant and a number of residents. It was actually amiss of me not to mention that the municipal boundary runs through the middle of the site. So this portion of it is within the city of Moreland, and this portion here, you can faintly see the line there, is within the city of Melbourne. So as you can see, the portion that's in the city of Moreland is mostly parking, whereas the area here, which is in the city of Melbourne, contains buildings for lunchrooms, etc., that type of thing as well. And then there's vehicle access through there, and it contains spaces up to 60 workers, and there's approximately about 20 truck movements associated with the project as well. So there was a public information session as part of the public notice period, and then in March of this year there was a planning and information discussion meeting which was held at the club, and it was attended by a number of residents, the permit applicant and members of the club. Post that meeting, the permit applicant has agreed to the imposition of 2 conditions, which are Condition 6 and Condition 1J contained in the agenda. Condition 6 relates to a limitation on the number of vehicle movements to 20 per day, and Condition 1J seeks to put hoarding or screening around the site as well. The main issues relate to the impact on traffic, particularly at the Brunswick Road Gibson Street Avenue intersection, amenity impacts from construction vehicles as well. The recommendation is contained on pages 29 to 33 of tonight's agenda. Right, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any objectors in the gallery who wish to speak? Yes, please come forward.
Thank you, councillors. Dennis Green is my name. I'm at 106/62 Cade Way in Parkville, which is immediately behind the subject site. I represent the residents of the Mercy Place Apartments, which is the T-piece of the property next door, as you can see. So we're immediately abutting the subject site. Firstly, I'm not sure if this is regular or not, but if granted, I would like to table a list of errors and inconsistencies between the executive summary report and the report itself, which is there for public. May I do that to the
Yes,
planning
please.
officer?
We can hand it around.
I won't go through those in detail. There's copies there if you wish later. Among other things, the report is incorrect in saying that Melbourne City Council is yet to make a decision. It has already made its decision on the 16th of March. And the period for lodging objections has also closed. I understand an appeal to VCAT has been lodged on the 6th of April by Mercy Health. Now, that means that Melbourne has assessed the issue in isolation from Moreland, as if the impacts or potential impacts can be assessed on part of the site only. Clearly, the impacts are aggregated on each site, and that seems to be an anomaly. The assessment's been force-fitted, in my opinion, or our opinion, around the planning zone categories of public use, in particular car parks and special uses they relate to private sports fields. As a matter of fact, and this is another issue for the report, the site has not been used as a sports field at all for at least the last 2 years. It is de facto vacant private land. Furthermore, the car park here is not a normal car park at all. It is, in fact, in our opinion, de facto a construction depot. No car parks elsewhere in the suburbs have facilities for lunch and other activities by the drivers, pick up and drop off and so forth, smoking zones and whatnot that are proposed. The most important issue I wish to raise is that the most serious potential impact on residents is actually identified in the report is that on aged persons in the adjacent Mercy Place precinct. But there's no evidence I can see in the report of actual consideration of that issue. It's just listed as one of the issues. And there's no discussion in the report or the executive summary about that. The point to make is we have a car park which is not a normal car park but a construction depot, and a residential area which is not a normal residential area either. There are in fact 200 residents in that Mercy Place precinct, 140 in the nursing home and 60 in the retirement village immediately adjacent to it. And their average ages in retirement village is about 83. I'm abnormal, I'm only 75. In the nursing home it's about 87. 32 people in the previous 12 months died in that nursing home. The people closest in that nursing home to the subject proposed works on the ground floor are palliative care people in the nursing home. We don't believe that's appropriate for this type of activity next door to that. We expect, although I speak on behalf of the people in the retirement village, we have a contractual relationship with Mercy Health for entry at the appropriate time into the nursing home, and that's why we're also interested in the nursing home impact as well, because within a 2-year period of this project we can expect at least 10 of our people, probably 15, given their age, to go into there. And in the past year, out of that 32 people who died on that site, 4 of those were actually died in the retirement village. Another 4 soon after moving from one to the other. So these are vulnerable people in the main, and it's not up to them or they're not able to. Most of them present their own individual objections because of their general health condition, mobility, hearing defects and all the rest of it that they have. Another major issue is we've been asked by the chairperson here to talk about how you would fix this. We have asked Oricon, the proponent, in writing and verbally, what alternative sites did you consider? We have never received any adequate answer, and when we put it in writing, we got no answer. It was ignored in the letter. I quote from the 8th of the March meeting at which Mr Hughes was present, "It is the site our processes led us to." We have asked in writing that they tell us which other ones they looked at, because they said they did in another meeting, and that this was the most appropriate, and they would not declare what they were. I am a civil engineer of 50 years experience, professional experience. I say technically there are at least 2 feasible sites within 300 metres of this site, and they are sports fields. But the matter will not be addressed, or has not been addressed by the proponent. So may I leave that there, councillors, unless you wish to ask me any questions.
Can I just ask the gentleman one question? The alternative sites, are they north of the current site?
Immediately north. Immediately north on the other side of Brunswick Road.
Yeah, okay.
I'm referring to not the whole, but part of Ormond Park, or alternatively Holbrook Park.
Holbrook Park, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Can I ask a question as well, Councillor? Oh, gosh. Okay. Sorry, thank you.
Obviously, the works will cause a great deal of extra noise on top of what's already there, but what's the impact of the freeway and the existing car park and function venue in terms of noise on where you currently live?
So minimal. It's minimal because of the sound barriers there. And by the way, another issue I should have mentioned was the proposal to put up visual screening, shade cloth, which is mentioned around the fence, only goes to so high. These apartments and the nursing home are 3 stories high. The apartments has no apartments on the ground level. All of the apartments in the relevant area overlook the site, and the shade cloth will be useless in that respect. We also believe it'll have an adverse impact on the sale of those units, which is another issue altogether.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there another objector? Yes, please come forward.
Thank you, Councillor.
Good evening, councillors. Brett McDonald, 2 Gibson Avenue, resident of Brunswick for 20 years, in the present location for 4, and been on Sustainable Moreland Action Group for the last 4 years. So I stand with my neighbours here today to encourage you to reject the permit application before you, and the reasons are detailed in a letter that I submitted as part of the consultation process, concerned about increased traffic movements, in particular that of trucks. And so, there's a lack of consistency in some of the documentation we've received. They've been quite vague. A lot of the sentiment has been unqualified and really difficult to lock down in what is the actual frequency and motion of trucks, I suppose, on a day-to-day basis, but then over the next 2 years. And so another point of that is that there's inconsistencies in relation to when the site will be open and when it will conclude each day during the week as well as on weekends. And so one of the problems we have is that of what are the trucks that are going to be running along Gibson Avenue, noting that Gibson Avenue is 100 metres long. And so what we found through, I suppose, the proposal is we'll have at least 60 cars of staff. Noting on the picture behind you, there's car spaces for up to 118 vehicles. So we know that there's at least 120 passenger vehicles per day, there's at least 60 vans per day, and there's probably somewhere between initially 30 truck movements, but recently they've through this recent report suggested that number will reduce to 20 truck movements per day. So we still don't know what type of trucks they'll be. There's indications they'll be small trucks, but they could be double B trucks, for example. And so this is a massive impost on, I suppose, the truck move or the vehicle movements within Gibson Avenue. So we're looking at a minimum an extra 200 vehicle movements along that 100-metre strip of Gibson Avenue, which is a fundamental increase and a fundamental step change to what we have at the moment. So this brings obviously noise, disruption to myself that works from home. So then you have productivity issues. We've got a frequency of trucks. We've got a whole range of issues that come with that: noise, dust, emissions, loss of visual and physical amenity, and of course the prevailing health impacts that come with that. So we'll end up with a concentration of those vehicles leaving the car park at 6:30, and then arriving at 6:30 between 6:30 and 7, and then leaving the site from 7 to 7:30, and then an unknown or roughly estimated number of trucks a number of trucks leaving and exiting the site, or entering and exiting the site, throughout the day. So the planning permit conditions before you are stipulating that the proponent is prepared to look at 20 truck movements per day. There's still uncertainty as to what trucks they are. There's going to be a big difference between a 4-metre truck and a 10-metre truck versus a double B. So, if this planning permit goes through, we'd encourage council to really tighten up the planning permit conditions, one being that of truck movements, the other one can be van movements and passenger vehicle movements as well. And the other is we end up with a concentration of vehicles in the AM peak and the PM peak. And so Gibson Avenue is 100 metres, so if we've got 60 cars trying to get into Gibson Road, approximately at the same time, it's going to be gridlock through Gibson Avenue, and then gridlock as they jump onto Brunswick Road and presumably onto CityLink. And I support the issues tabled by Dennis. I also picked up a number of factual errors in the summary documentation before you. And that's, beside the point. Oh, sorry, that is supporting, but yes. Get back to my point of, really trying to tighten up the conditions with this particular planning permit if it is approved. And if it's not, then we're in a kind of a bit of a pickle, because then we'll end up in VCAT. And so it's that, how do we negotiate the best outcome for Reggio Calabria and for the local residents as well? Ideally, we don't want to see, a car park dropped in a piece of green, unused space at the moment. But if it has to go through, then we would like to certainly see all of those conditions tightened up, so that the proponents have some strict guidelines that they must adhere to, and it's something that we can actually quantify and measure. So if there's any variation on that, we can then bring them back in to make sure they fall into line. So there's simple practices that can take place. There's reference to an environmental management plan and a waste management plan. There's some environmental monitoring. We also encourage noise monitoring as well. So we make sure that the site aligns with best practice EPA's best practice guidelines.
Brett,
And
I'm
that's
conscious
it.
of the time.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Are there any further objectors? Yes, please come forward.
Hello, my name is Andrew Mooners. I'm from 965A Parkway, Brunswick West. I'm in about 50 metres from the entrance to the proposed site. Hello, Megan. Good to meet you again.
Good to see you.
I support the previous two speakers, and I just want to make some points. Key points are obviously the committee here makes decisions based on information put forward to them. I, in my note to council, challenge the credibility of some of the reports, and my previous speakers have also mentioned the Oricon report and the traffic report have got inconsistencies in them. They're based on information that is dubious in some areas. The traffic management report was undertaken on 3 days midweek. The type of vehicles that are going to be using the site is inconsistent, again picked up by the previous one. So I specifically asked in my letter to get a response to these issues, and I was told by council, no, I would not be getting a written response to my letter. I had assumed wrongly that this would be addressed in the summary. It has not. So the credibility again of the information that you're making a decision on is challenged and has not been responded to. I come from an infrastructure background, worked on major projects throughout Australia. Project timelines do move. There's situations where, due to construction requirements, less or more people may be required on site, less or more mix of vehicles can come. So the 2-year time frame, first of all, there's no certainty on 2-year time frame. That's the way projects work, there's uncertainties. And the number of vehicles accepted will vary. Now, I've been involved in writing these sort of submissions and reviewing these submissions. And one of the key elements that you need to ask yourself is, I'm not telling you how to do your job, but when people say they're going to do something, how are they going to demonstrate they're doing it? I say it time and time again. We will do this, but there's no follow-up. So we ask that if this is implemented, that there's clear methods of following up and reporting back to us. They talk about dust studies, environmental management plans, etc. they're going to adhere to. They're putting a dust monitoring system there. Can we have some sort of feedback on a monthly basis? Traffic movements, dust, noise. They're going to such a great expense. This would be a small expense to actually give some feedback to monitor. So if you say you're going to do that, then demonstrate you are doing it. And if you're not, I ask, what is the repercussions? Are you going to stop the site? Is there going to be a penalty? Again, I pose that question. So that was about all I had to say, except obviously I feel for the nursing home next door. Sorry, there was 2 issues. Sorry, the nursing home next door. Obviously, some of these, elderly people in their twilight of their career and their life, and 2 years is the rest of their lifetime, and so their quiet environment will be disturbed, particularly at 6:30 in the morning. I mean, I would hate to be in that position. I live across the road, and I eventually plan to move across there in a few years' time. So I'd hate for a similar thing to happen to me. But there is one major gap here, and I think it's part of the cross, because it's close to the boundary, the issue between the MCC and your council and our council. It talks about where the entrance is going to be is on a sweeping bend, and there's an entrance. That's where you're going on a sweeping bend. Now, as an engineer, you don't put entryways there. It's a safety hazard. This report, all it says is that the MCC will handle that. But don't you owe it to actually find out what they're doing? Is it safe, what they're doing? You make the assumption they're going to make it safe. For me as a resident, why I don't care about cross-boundary boundaries. There should be collaboration to come up with an integrated solution. What is happening there on that sweeping bin? I can't see a solution. There's buses going around that corner, and now you want to have trucks and all that coming through there? I just don't see how it can work. I'd assume there'll be the entrance will be somewhere else. So from a safety hazard, it hasn't been addressed. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Unless you've got any questions.
Not at this stage. I think we'll reserve questions until the end.
All right, thank you,
At this
Helen.
point, yeah. Are there any further objectors? Yes, please come forward. And then we'll go to the gentleman in the back.
Nick Dolby, 5 Holbrook Crescent, West Brunswick. The previous gentleman mentioned there was a bus there. It is not mentioned in the report. There is a bus route using Gibson Avenue and that section of Park Street. It's the Moonee Ponds to Melbourne University bus. It's heavily used. I rode past it yesterday morning and there were dozens of people waiting at bus stops in that Parkville Games Village precinct to use that bus. I'm surprised that it is not mentioned in the report, that no consideration has been given to the impacts upon public transport. Thank you.
Thank you. And for the gentleman in the back, please come forward. Oh, sorry. Yep. Whichever.
Hi, my name is Ling. I live on Gibson Avenue. As someone who lives just a few metres away from the intended use of the facility, I urge the council not to underestimate the impact of dust and noise and disruption 7 days a week over a protracted period of 2 years. As the previous gentleman just noted, the report plays down the effects of the loss of amenity and the increased traffic in the local area. I don't think you can make light of the potential safety risks to pedestrians, to public users, to cyclists who use Gibson Avenue every day, to taking the public transport as a connector between Brunswick West and Parkville. And these users include the primary school children on foot and on bikes as they travel twice a day between home and school. So I don't believe this issue of public loss of public amenity and public safety in particular has been adequately considered and addressed. Secondly, about the concern on dust, we are told in the report that there will be an air monitoring system with some impressive capabilities like real-time readings posted online and SMS alerts. Now, this is well and good, but as one of the previous gentlemen has pointed out, there must be sufficient and specific numbers of dust monitors and proper follow-up and of reporting back. And, there has to be a sound monitoring and feedback mechanism and system in place. So all we've seen to date is just a token mention of one dust monitor. And it's nowhere near or at the Gibson Avenue gate and the Mercy Aged Care Home where, it will be most useful. So, that's real concern that's not been sufficiently addressed to now. Now, with regards to timings of the operation, it's been noted that there are some inaccuracies and inconsistencies of timings, and that's really confusing. I was surprised to find out in the report that there's now going to be operational activity 7 days of the week. Now, the application had stated site use hours from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., no day specified. At the community meeting, it was conveyed that this would be from Mondays to Fridays, with sufficient notice given to residents for any occasional weekend operations. Then we find out in the report that the hours of operation include Saturday and Sunday. Now, how did this extended hours of operation creep in? So, that's something that needs to be addressed. If in the event that permission is granted for the use as stated, I suggest no activity be permitted on Sunday at the very least. And this is in line with the advice of the development engineer that council had sought. And I also suggest that a later commencement time on Saturday be considered specifically 10 a.m. rather than 7 a.m. Now, this will allow those of us who work regular weekdays and only have the 2 weekend days to rest for sufficient catch-up on sleep. So on these grounds, thank you.
Thank you. Is there another objector who wishes? Yes, please come forward.
My name's Kevin Mercer. I'm here representing Mercy Health. We are the owners and operators of the Mercy Place Parkville facility, which has a residential aged care facility as well as a retirement village. Firstly, I'll endorse the comments made by many of the previous presenters, and I'm not going to go over those again, but they are certainly points of concern for us as well, and they're covered in our submissions we've made. I just really wanted to, further emphasise how we think it really is an inappropriate use of a site so close to a residential care facility, and we have grave concerns for our residents and their enjoyment of life in that facility. The site itself backs straight onto residential aged care, people of high needs, of very vulnerable and frail people that are at the end of their life. And for the duration of this particular project, that would be, for many of them, they wouldn't live through the duration of the project. They're in their state, good sleep, good health, peace and quiet is very important to their quality of life at their stage of life. And as many of the other speakers have said, the various conditions have changed dramatically, or the statements around how the site will operate have changed dramatically, which gives us grave concerns as to particularly to time of the day, the numbers of days, and particularly the weekend use, which originally we were told would be occasional. It now seems to be just part and parcel of it will be used 7 days. Also, just want to raise the point around the club next door and what seems to be we're creating a car park here where there is already an existing car park in the club, and we've raised that both with yourselves and Melbourne City Council as to why that could not be considered to be used as a car park. It's part of the club, as is this land, and by changing some of those lease arrangements could make a more suitable solution. As mentioned with others, the amenity, the noise, the impact, the light pollution on the site, I think would be disturbing to our residents, and we have concerns about that, and we'd need to see proper controls in place, as been emphasised, and not just statements that they will be in place, but what are the ramifications if people are out, if the operator steps outside of the set boundaries. I'd also highlight that the land lies within a public use zone, which we don't consider this as in line with the purpose of a public use zone. I note that Melbourne City Council has already made a ruling on this about a month ago, and I find it quite disappointing that Melbourne City and the Moreland Council have not worked collaboratively on this. They seem to be making separate decisions for a block of land that's split between the two councils, and it's one proposal across the whole block. So I'm not sure how that's going to play out with them already made a decision. We've objected for review of that decision, and we have a directions hearing scheduled with them in July.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Or at the end?
We'll leave it to the end, yeah. That's fine. Yes, please come forward. You're an objector, yep.
My name's Chris Cochrane. I live in Park Street, 50, 60 metres from the entrance. Look, I'm going to be very brief, but just relating to the last speaker, myself and another resident approached the council a few weeks ago just asking for the terms and conditions of the use of that land when it was given to Regio Club. Well, not given, sold at a very, very low price a long time ago. I remember going to those meetings and there were community use. That was the crux of the use of that land, and why they got it was community soccer, Essendon Soccer Club. It's going to be a community, we're all for the community. It's now sort of being used as a profit money-making venture by the Regio Club. I don't understand why that's changed. Now, I can't really say because we asked the council to give us the conditions, what were the conditions of the sale of the land at the time, and that sort of stuff. But I do remember going to meetings, and continually the Regio Club was saying that our aim here is to set up a community use area based mainly soccer at that stage, but definitely, as per the last speaker, public use, public amenity, public use. That seems to have completely gone by the wayside, and it's sort of a fait accompli now that that it's going to go ahead. Like I say, I can't comment because the information wasn't given to us, even though we requested it. And yeah, that's I just wanted to. That's the final point.
Thank you for adding that. Are there any further objectors who wish to speak? Is there a representative for the applicant present? No? Okay, well, I might call for a short adjournment.
Yeah, I'll move a motion to second adjournment.
I'm happy to second.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Kavanagh, moved by Councillor Hopper. We'll just take a short adjournment for approximately 5 minutes. I believe we have a motion in relation to this application.
Yes, I'd like to move that we lay this item on the table. And if I have a seconder, I'll just very briefly explain what that... Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Hopper, seconded by Councillor Gillis.
Thank you. So just for members of the gallery, I know that it's a late night for you. We just need a little bit more time to prepare an alternative resolution. So by laying this item on the table, it gives us the time to do that while we consider another item, and we'll then pick this back up off the table when we're ready to return to it. So hopefully you shouldn't be here for too much longer. You're probably looking at about another 20 to 30 minutes.
I will need to backtrack a little bit because we do need a motion to reopen the meeting.
Right.
So, moved by Councillor Kavanagh, seconded by Councillor Gillies. All those in favour? I declare that carried. And
I will move that we lay the item on the table.
Thank you. And thank you for the explanation, Councillor Hopper. All those in favour? I declare that carried. We'll now move on to the next application on the agenda this evening, which is DD 2816, 68 Everett Street, Brunswick West, planning permit application MPS 2015-466, D16 46494.
Thank you, councillors and members of the gallery. Good evening. The third item for this evening is a proposal at 68 Everett Street, proposing 3 double-storey and 1 single-storey dwelling. So the subject site is located a short distance west of Melbourne Road. It's on the kind of a transition between the general residential and the neighbourhood residential zone on the eastern side of Everett Street. So subject site is 631 square metres. To the north of the site is a 2-storey dwelling. To the south is a single-storey dwelling. That's the subject site. That's basically the interface. So, as I mentioned, the 2-storey to the north, the single-storey to the south. To the corner of Barker's Parade and Everett Street is 3 2-storey dwellings. As I mentioned, proposal for 4 dwellings, 3 double-storey, 1 single-storey. The single-storey to the back of the site, with vehicular access off the laneway to the back. The 3 double-storey dwellings will have access along the southern side by a common driveway. There's 4. And that's the proposed streetscape elevation. There were 11 objections to the application. As you can see, majority of the objectors come from Baker's Parade. Also an objection from the immediately north, number 70 Everett Street. So the key issues that came through the 11 objections: use of the laneway, the access to dwelling 4, insufficient open space, the character of the development and overdevelopment in general, and traffic. The planning officer held a planning information discussion meeting on the 24th of March. There were no objectors that showed up to that, so subsequent consultation was held by phone with the immediately adjoining neighbours. From a council perspective, the key issue of concern is double-storey dwellings 2 and 3, so the extent of it. We've recommended a condition in the recommendation before councillors this evening to modify the form of a dwelling 2 and 3. That's been in consultation with the permit applicant. What that proposes is to provide additional articulation and increase the setback of the development from the southern boundary. So at its nearest point here, it was previously proposed at 3 metres. It's now increased to 3.7 metres, and at the back of the site it's increased to 5.7 metres. That's it. Thank you, councillors. The recommendation is to support the proposal, subject to the conditions contained in the recommendation.
Thank you, Robert. Is there any member of the gallery who wishes to object to this application? No members from the gallery who wish to object for Everett Street. Is there a representative for the applicant present who wishes to speak?
I'll make a quick comment.
Yes, sure.
My name's George Spanos. I'm from GSA Architects and we're the applicants. I'd like to say that we've attempted to provide a high quality contemporary response to the site and to the neighbourhood, providing adequate parking, landscape opportunities and the substantial setbacks which have already been mentioned. We have worked closely with the planning officers to mould this into what we feel is a diverse proposal which has 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom and single-storey dwellings. We respectfully request that the committee support the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from councillors to the applicant or the officers?
Just one from to the officer, if possible. Were there any areas of non-compliance?
Thank you, councillor. Yes, there were some areas of non-compliance. So street setback, the location of habitable room windows to the common driveway and overlooking, those have all been resolved through conditions contained in the recommendation.
So if we were to adopt the recommendation before us from the officer, that would deal with, that would ensure that all items were now compliant?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you. Any further discussion from councillors? Is there a motion in relation to this application?
I'm happy to move the officer recommendation on page 48, 49.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Is there a second?
I'm happy to second.
Councillor Thompson. Councillor Kavanagh, do you wish to speak?
Just very briefly, just to say that I was reasonably confident that conditions dealt with the non-compliant issues, and that's been confirmed to me by the officer, and so I'm comfortable with this application to be approved.
Councillor Thompson, do you wish to speak?
Happy to concur with Councillor Kavanagh's.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Any further comments from councillors? In that case, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. And I'll now pass to Robert to outline the legal process from here.
Thank you, councillors. The Urban Planning Committee have resolved to issue notice of decision to grant a planning permit for the construction of 4 dwellings at 68 Everett Street. The applicant and objector parties will receive a copy of the notice of decision. The objector parties will have 21 days in which to lodge an appeal through VCAT. The applicant will have 60 days in which to appeal any conditions contained within the notice of decision.
Thank you, Robert. We'll now move on to the next application. And there's a few here which relate to extension of time in relation to the Pentridge site.
I foreshadow that I'd like to move them in block if possible.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Do you wish to include the first
As per the recommendations, but if there's objectives that wish to speak, by all means.
Certainly. Are there any objectors in relation to the Pentridge extensions of time application present today? No? Is there a representative for the applicant present? No? Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
I'd like to move the next 5 agenda items in block as per the recommendations set down by council officers.
Councillor Thompson, is there a seconder in relation to this? Councillor Gillies?
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. These are literally just extensions of time on existing permits. We were going to display one screen that would explain why we're doing this reasonably quickly. It's purely that this is by the book and there's nothing that we could object to them on, and it is purely a formality, so that's why we've done that.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Gillies, do you wish to speak in relation to... No?
Thank you.
Are there any further speakers? Councillor Kavanagh?
I'd like to make the point that there is a bearing in the recommendation. In DED 2916, we are putting our position at VCAT not to extend that permit, right? And the reason for that is quite an interesting one, that council actually owns part of that land now. When it was originally approved, it was owned by the applicant, but he's inadvertently put forward an extension of time to some land that we own, right? So, which is because it's changed ownership since that time. So, in that one there, obviously we have some say in it because it's our land, and it's probably more administrative error than anything. Regarding the other applications, unless the planning laws have changed, or unless there's some reason not to extend the permit, in fact, we're almost acting illegally if we don't extend the permit, because it's accepted that applicants are allowed to have their permits extended unless there's been a major change in the meantime to a particular zoning or something of the land that is appropriate. So that's the reason, as Councillor Thompson outlined. In essence, these are really a formality. Does it mean that every person around this table likes these applications? No, it doesn't. But it means basically we're not in a position to refuse them.
Thank you for that explanation, Councillor Kavanagh. And I'll put those on block to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. And I'll pass to the officer to outline the legal process from here.
The Urban Planning Committee has resolved that its position at VCAT for items DED 2916 through to DED 3316 be to support all the requests for an extension except DED 2916 at 22 to 30 Pentridge Boulevard and 27 to 31 Urquhart Street, which is not supported for the reasons set out at page 74 of the agenda, and item DED 32/16 at 9S Wardens Walk, Coburg, for the reasons set out at page 170 of the agenda, where confirmation of a previous extension to the permit is required.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the next application, DED 3416, 11 Urquhart Street, Coburg. And this is in relation to a Heritage Victoria application.
So pursuant to Section 71 of the Heritage Act 1995, Heritage Victoria wrote to Council on the 9th of February 2016, providing a copy of an application for a heritage permit that they have received. This is for the construction of an 8-storey building plus rooftop terrace at 11 Urquhart Street, Coburg. The letter provided Council with 14 days to comment on the application. The application was reported to the 9th of March 2016 Council meeting, where Council resolved to make a submission objecting to the application. Amongst other things, the submission outlined that further information should be provided in relation to the appearance of the building when viewed from Wardens Walk, and that this information should be provided to Council. Further 3-dimensional plans and elevations were provided to Council from Heritage Victoria on the 17th of April, which are currently displayed on the screen. This report provides an assessment of this additional information against the specific direction in the Pentridge Village Design Guidelines and Master Plan, which seeks to ensure that new buildings do not detract from the heritage buildings when viewed from Warden's Walk. The recommendation is that the Urban Planning Committee resolve that Council make an additional submission to Heritage Permit application outlining that it does not consider the direction of the Pentridge Village Design Guidelines and Master Plan, which is to ensure that new buildings do not detract from G Division when viewed from Warden's Walk, and that its position be that this is not satisfied for the reasons set out at page 230 of the agenda.
Thank you. I'm aware there probably won't be any objectors present in relation to this, but is there anybody who wishes to speak in relation to this application? No? Okay. Is there a motion for a councillor to move? Councillor Gillies?
Yes, I'll move it.
Moved by Councillor Gillies. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hopper.
This is the quickest meeting in history.
All those in favour?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Kavanagh?
Can I speak to it?
Yes.
Look, it is an important thing that we do make an application to Heritage Victoria, and I'm glad that councillors have been involved in the submission process. As would be known by many residents who followed the Pentridge development a lot, many of the things that have been approved under ministerial approval, individual councillors would not be supportive of, and so unfortunately in this application we are not the responsible authority as such. All we are doing is making a submission in the same way that any objector can make a submission, or in some circumstances can make submissions. So basically we're saying that we're not satisfied that heritage reasons have been we're not satisfied with the heritage controls that have been placed on this, and our submission is that it does detract from Warden's Walk.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Hopper, yes.
Thank you. Just to speak briefly, I know that there's nobody here objecting, but there might be people at home who are watching who have been active in the Pentridge discussion that's been taking place over many months. As Councillor Kavanagh alluded to, we did have the opportunity taken away from us by the previous state government to be involved in a lot of the decision making that does take place in the Pentridge village. But this is one example of where we can put a case forward to Heritage Victoria and let them know that this isn't an outcome that we view as being of optimal relevance for the heritage of this particular precinct. And you can see from the pictures that are displayed on the screen, there are many cases, particularly in cities like Moreland, and as you get closer to the inner city, where there are beautiful old heritage buildings, but where people do decide to build and change the area, and where you can make changes that I guess are sympathetic to the heritage of the area, where you can build in light of the history and what used to be in the area, but also accommodate all of the people who want to live in areas like Coburg. In this particular case, I mean, anyone who looks at this picture can clearly see that this is not sympathetic to the heritage control here, and this is a particular part of Coburg that's very special to me, and it's very special to my family. My grandfather worked at Pentridge Prison for a long time. My parents got married at the church on the corner that is visible in some of the pictures that we look at. And that's not a self-interest type thing, but I think it does speak to the kind of history that people have in this community and what these heritage buildings mean to people in Moreland, and the fact that, you know, we do need to see growth and we do need to accommodate all the people that want to live here. But from time to time, we also need to take a stand in terms of the heritage buildings that we have in our community as well.
Thank you, Councillor Hopper. Are there any further councillors who wish to speak? No. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. Now, I'm aware that we're waiting on the item that was laid on the table previously to return back to it. We're just waiting on an officer to return who has the motion available. So I'll make
5-minute adjournment.
Yes.
Yeah,
all those in favour? Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Gillies. All those in favour? I declare that carried.
5 minutes.
Thank you. We won't
at least go and find out what he's
Welcome back, everybody, and thank you for your patience. Now, I'll just ask councillors to move a motion to reopen the meeting. Moved by Councillor Gillies, seconded by Councillor Hopper. All those in favour? I declare that carried. And we're going to pick up the item that we laid on the table, DD 27. Sorry.
Move a motion to pick that up off the table.
I'll move a motion.
Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Hopper. All those in favour? I declare that carried. So we're resuming this item now, and I'll just pass to councillors to have some discussion about this particular motion.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a question of the representative from Merri Health, if that's okay, the gentleman at the back.
Mercy Health.
Sorry, Mercy Health, I apologise. I'm interested in the level of, yes, thank you. I'm interested in the amount of consultation that the City of Melbourne undertook with you and your residents prior to making this decision, as I note from the report that they didn't attend the planning information discussion session that we arranged. Did they undertake otherwise to have a discussion with you or your residents prior to making this decision under officer delegation?
No, not that I'm aware of. I personally went and had a meeting with them to go through our application and our submission, I think. Sorry, not our application, our submission. But I'm not aware that they've come out to have any meetings with any of our residents. You're not aware of any, Dennis?
Yeah.
But may I?
Yes, certainly. Oh, sorry.
That is so, to my knowledge, and it is one of the errors in the report which I tabled before. Statement there that says there was a meeting with 3 objectors from Mercy Health or whatever. As far as the residents of the apartments are concerned, the only notices we got was an acknowledgement of the objection and notice of the decision.
Right.
As far as I know, too, they never visited the site to see the conditions there either.
Thank you. And so the meeting that you did have with the City of Melbourne, did you seek that meeting or did they seek to meet with you?
No, I initiated that meeting.
All right. Thank you for that. I'd like to move a motion, if that's...
Councillor Hopper.
Thank you. So I'd like to move the motion that's now displayed on the screen, which is that the Urban Planning Committee resolves that a refusal to grant a planning permit number MPS 2015-895 be issued for the temporary use, building and works for a car park for staff and construction vehicles associated with the CityLink Tullamarine widening project at 476 to 478 Brunswick Road, Parkville, subject to the following grounds of refusal. 1, that the proposed use of the land as a car park fails the purpose of the special use zone, Schedule 1, private sports ground, which seeks to provide for areas in private ownership to be used as private sports ground. 2, the proposed use and development is contrary to Clause 2 of the special use zone, Schedule 1, private sports ground, due to the adverse amenity impacts, in particular, A, transport of materials, goods or commodities to or from the land, B, appearance of the building, works or materials, and C, the emission of noise, artificial light and dust. And if I have a seconder, I'll speak.
Seconded by Councillor Kavanagh.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Look, I'd like to begin by saying to residents who are in the gallery this evening and anyone who might be watching at home, don't ever think that you can't change the decision of an urban planning committee by coming out and making your objection, because I know that a lot of the time people sitting at home, and particularly in the South Ward of Brunswick where so much development takes place every day, might think that it is too late for them to change a decision of council and that they don't have the power to do that. But in reality, you've come here tonight and you've completely changed my position on this matter. And you've done that by talking about the human impacts on the people who live around what's going to take place here and the level of consultation that, or the lack thereof, that has been undertaken by other individuals. I certainly accept that our officers undertook planning information and discussion to ensure that residents had the opportunity to air their concerns about this, but residents who live in an adjoining city, it sounds like, have not had that kind of opportunity to be consulted on this particular application. And it does sound like it will have enormous adverse impact to the people who are living abutting this site and who travel to visit this site. And certainly the people representing the aged care facility this evening have made that very clear. And the moment that I heard that the closest residential aged care to the site in question was in fact palliative care, I knew that I could reach no other decision but to reject this site this evening. I'd like to thank Mr Moonis, who's come along this evening and who has always been a very vocal advocate for the people in the Park Street area and has kept a very active watch on traffic in the area and on concerns around that, and has met with council officers in the past to discuss the fact that there hasn't been a lot of support from the state government to put in traffic calming measures and other improvements that would make Park Street and that surrounding area that little bit safer for people who are using it as a transport corridor. And it is a very busy area, abutting as it does so close to the freeway, and the use by trucks and other work vehicles of this particular area of Park Street would have, I think, an adverse impact on the traffic and safety in that area. But in closing, I think that going back to that note about the aged care facility and the people who live there, as you approach the end of your life, I imagine that it may often be the case that you feel like choices are taken away from you. And the people who are living in this facility have made a choice. They've made a choice to perhaps spend some of the last years of their life in a facility that I'm sure they find beautiful and peaceful and where they're well looked after and where there is easy access for their loved ones to come and visit them. And this application would take that away, in my opinion, and that's not a choice that you have made as residents of that facility. That choice would be taken away from you under this application, and it's for that reason that I very strongly oppose it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kavanagh?
Yeah. I echo the words of Councillor Hopper, and I believe she spoke very well there. I also believe that each and every objector that spoke tonight added something to the objection. As much as I was certainly taken by the aged care facility, the neighbours also made extremely valid points. When we come tonight, we need to keep an open mind. Right? It's actually part of the legislation that we can't have made up our mind until we have heard all of the information. A little bit like a jury at a court case. You can't make up your mind until you've heard the prosecution and the defence. It's a similar thing here. And so tonight, as Councillor Hopper mentioned, it is one of those occasions when you hear the information that's put before you, it does alter what you're originally thinking. Fortunately, we hadn't made a decision till then. We may have come with our perceived ideas, but we certainly hadn't made a decision as such. And can I apologise to the residents, because when I looked at the agenda and I looked at page 43, it might be my poor eyesight, but I actually didn't realise that was the aged care facility in that particular position on the diagram. I knew that it was in the local neighbourhood. I know a lady that was there not long after it opened, and she's since passed away, but I didn't actually realise it was in that particular spot. And that would have influenced my decision. Can I say one other thing? It's also an example as to why councils usually have their municipal boundaries at natural places like creeks and waterways and things like that, because it's an absolutely ridiculous decision that one property sits within two council boundaries and therefore requires two planning permits. So at this stage, subject to the appeal that residents, I believe, have put forward against the Melbourne City Council decision, at the moment they almost have a permit there and we're refusing the permit here. But so be it. In this particular part, we're the responsible authority, and that's been our decision. And just because Melbourne City Council happens to be a bigger council and a capital city council, our decision is just as legitimate as what their decision is. It's no different in that respect. So, well done on the objectors tonight. Well done on the way you put your case, and well done on your further battles with Melbourne City Council on this.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Gillies?
I'm not going to say much. All I wanted to say is that I do agree with everything that Councillor Hopper and Councillor Kavanagh have said. And I add that, in fact, I had concerns also as to whether or not we could even really monitor what we were stipulating needed to be, done through, in the permit. And although I've been told the officers would have been able to manage it, I know that they're very overworked, and I just didn't feel comfortable with it at all. And so thank you very much for talking to us and walking our way through all those issues.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. Are there any further speakers?
I'm a Rob.
I'll put Councillor Hopper's motion to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried, and I'll just pass to the officer now to outline the process from here.
Would you mind recording that it was carried unanimously?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Saskia.
Thank you, Councillor. The Urban Planning Committee is resolved to refuse the application for the reasons displayed on the board. That decision will be posted to the permit applicant and all objectors. The permit applicant has a 60-day period in which to appeal that decision to the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll now declare the Urban Planning Committee meeting closed for this evening. Thank you for coming.
It was natural bound.
Oh, yeah, it was. Yeah, no, okay. It was a dispute.
The creek used to
run through there.
I
thought it must have been that.
And it's just
My Northern Golf Club's got half of that too. No, I thought it might have been, I wasn't sure. Thanks for that.
A river run through it. There's a story in that.
Well done, Madam Chair.
9 items. An hour and a half.
Yep. It looked a lot bigger than what it actually was
It did.
because it was moved on block.